policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live, this is Point of View. And now, your guest host for Point of View.
Good afternoon and welcome. This is Debbie Georgatos, so happily sitting in, hosting today on Point of View. In Kirby Anderson's place, so happy to be here. I'm also joined on the round table by Kelly Shackelford. Often, as Kelly and I are sitting over on the other side and Kirby sitting in this chair, so kind of playing musical chairs, but as most of our listeners must know, Kelly Shackelford, President and CEO of First Liberty, and on the show many Friday afternoons. And we're going to start off today talking about, speaking of First Liberty and the cases they've been involved in, we're going to start with a case that has just garnered the attention of many people around the country, which was a decision by a federal appellate court, the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, that just goes to the heart of religious liberty in America. I'm going to let Kelly take it away and tell you.
It's a shocking opinion. I think anybody who hasn't seen this or heard about this, who's listening now, is going to have to pull their car over. I mean, it's that heart-wrenching. In light of what we'll also probably talk about later, Chief of Staff John Kelly's powerful statement that he made on the death of our soldiers. I mean, this ties in directly. This is the Bladensburg Peace Cross. It was put up, literally close to 100 years ago, over 90 years ago, by the American Legion with their money and with money in part from mothers who lost their sons in World War I. And it was to honor the 49 men who died, or really young men, who died in World War I for our freedom. And this memorial, again, been there about 100, close to a century. This federal court of appeals said that it's unconstitutional and has to be struck down after this much time. Now, let me read you, because I thought this was really well done. The judges, the three federal court of appeals judges, were all, because federal judges are appointed for life by a president. And so people look at who appoints. And so, were they appointed by a Democrat or Republican? This panel were all Democrats, okay? But one of the Democrats dissented. So that tells you how extreme of a decision this is. Let me read how he ended his dissent. This memorial stands in witness to, and these words are on the memorial, to the valor, endurance, courage, and devotion. Those are all around the side of the memorial. This memorial stands in witness to the valor, endurance, courage, and devotion of the 49 residents of Prince George's County, Maryland, quote, who lost their lives in the Great War for the liberty of the world. End quote. And then he says, I cannot agree that a monument so conceived and dedicated and that bears such witness violates the letter or the spirit of the very Constitution these heroes died to defend. That was how the dissent ended. That's a Democrat appointed, that's a Bill Clinton picked judge, okay? So this is not a Republican or a Ronald Reagan judge. This is outrageous. I mean, if this decision is allowed to stand, then every veterans memorial in every community of every state of this country is in jeopardy. And here's the thing, Debbie, and this is what I was telling the reporters yesterday, well, even this morning with the New York Times and some of these others, we don't even have to sort of guess where this goes. This federal court of appeals covers, now this is, Virginia is one of its states. So this decision covers the Arlington National Cemetery. Now, if this is correct, and you go, and they try to sort of push that off because they know how outrageous that would be. So they say, no. the Arlington National Cemetery, the headstones, there's people picking different, religious symbols. No. They're ignoring something. In the Arlington National Cemetery is a 20-foot tall cross called the Cross of Sacrifice. There's a 10-foot tall cross called the Argonne Cross. There's the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier that says known but to God. Those aren't personal headstones, and they would all have to come down. So this is a huge and shocking decision, which I think is it really is going to shake the very foundations of our country and shows the real battle we're in for our country.
It most certainly does. And to our listeners, we have a link to this. There's a Washington Post article that actually pretty well covered the subject, and it's at pointofview.net. I encourage you to go read the article and understand what the arguments are. We're going to unpack this again in the next segment, but I just want to start with this thought in the beginning. The justice who dissented is the Chief Justice.
Yes.
And so this is three people, men in black, three men in robes deciding for at least their circuit. And if it were to go to the Supreme Court and either be not granted cert or doesn't get heard before the Supreme Court, you have a standing federal appellate court opinion that basically says a religious symbol were just, I don't think it's in the decision, but I think prior to or in an earlier arms sticking out of the cross, and it won't be a cross anymore. It'll be okay. And it really goes, I love what you were saying a moment ago, Kelly, about it goes to the notion of, are we really going to agree that a symbol of Christianity cannot sit on public property in America? Because that's really what they're saying.
Yeah, it's pretty extreme. There's a CNN article that came out, and you wouldn't expect this, but the CNN article mentions the judge saying, cut the arm. What if we just cut the arms off the cross? Won't that be okay? And she said, what is your response? I know that was asked during the oral argument by one of these two judges who now struck this down. How about, because they were saying, well, how about that as a remedy now versus destroying it, which is what's going to happen. It's going to have to be destroyed if this were to be upheld. He said, would y'all just agree to having, the arms of the cross cut off? And I said, you mean defacing a national veterans memorial that was put up almost 100 years ago? No, that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable to anybody. It's not acceptable to veterans in this country. It's not acceptable to citizens. This is really, really scary to read a decision like this and to realize that if this were to become the law of the land, and everybody who's listening to this, probably within a rock's throw, certainly within a mile drive, is a veterans memorial that will be jeopardized. They're everywhere in our country, and we don't have a country that is about sort of religious cleansing where we go and wipe out any religious symbols that are anywhere in the country. I mean, are we going into Jefferson's memorial and we're going to sandblast all his mentions of God and liberty? Or, I mean, it would be endless. The Supreme Court itself, it's everywhere. So this decision is really disturbing. Again, I think every veteran immediately realizes how disturbing it is, and I find it ironic that it comes right about the time we're having this discussion of General Kelly, really, and what he had to say about how we respect and what's sacred and the people who gave their lives, because that's why this monument was put up. It was put up to honor these men who gave their lives for their country.
We're going to zip off to a break here. When we come back, I want to ask Kelly, who is the president and CEO of First Liberty, other cases you've been involved in where courts said, of course, you can have a symbol that has some religious nature to it on public property. Debbie Georgatos, filling in for Kirby. Don't go away.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
America's at a turning point, and we live in a world of uncertainty and fear. We need real answers and courage to stand strong. We need a vision of hope that reignites the fervor and courageous faith that once existed in this republic. That is the message of Jason Jimenez and Alex McFarland in their book, Stand Strong America. The authors remind us of how Christianity shaped the founding of America. They explain how biblical values were incorporated into the Declaration and Constitution, and they correct the inaccurate description of what was meant by a separation of church and state. They also remind us that America is under attack from a number of different directions. First, there is the gay agenda that has been used to shut down Christian businesses and marginalize Christian influence. There's also the threat of radical Islam, as well as the impact of militant secularism is having in our country. The authors not only provide a diagnosis of the problems facing America, but they also give a biblical prescription for action. They explain what we must do to develop a more perfect union. Their goal is to encourage and empower readers with a clear and invigorating message that will challenge them to love God, cherish freedom, pray for a better tomorrow. Barna that found that churchgoers want to hear more about how to apply biblical principles to contemporary issues. They list these top 12 issues that range from abortion to sexual identity to Islam. It's time for all of us to take a stand and make a difference in society. This book will enable all of us to be more effective in our witness to the world. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Based on the incredible true story and best-selling book from Paramount Pictures and Pureflix comes Same Kind of Different as Me, rated PG-13, now playing.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm Debbie Georgatos, filling in for Kirby Anderson, and I'm happily joined by Kelly Shackelford, President and CEO of First Liberty. We're often here together on Friday afternoons. So we were talking before the break, and we just started today, talking about a decision out of the Fourth Circuit, which is a federal court of appeals, and it was a case that arose in Maryland, and it had to do with a memorial, which Kelly was describing before the break, a 100-year-old memorial, or almost 100-year-old, but it's a cross, but it's a memorial, a remembrance put together by people who lost family members, sons and husbands in World War I. So the district court, I meant to mention the trial court, the district court actually held with the cross. That was they
So this Veterans Memorial is like many others. There's nothing wrong with it. It was obviously not put up for religious reasons. It was put up with to honor these people's sacrifice for their country. It was the common symbol used, in fact, all over the world. We had historians testify in the district court to say, go all over Europe. It's being put up to talk about sacrifice during the war. This is the common symbol.
And gratitude for their service, just gratitude for them. But this court, the appellate court, then struck it down and made a decision, which we were talking about in the last segment, is very alarming because it sends a signal that essentially a symbol of Christianity may not sit on public property. Very inconsistent with many cases that First Liberty has worked on in the past. I want you to mention a few of them, if you could, Kelly, just to contrast what has been upheld versus what was now here struck down.
Well, let's take the most obvious one is Salazar versus Bono. Salazar versus Bono involved a veterans memorial that was put up in 1934 by the hands of World War I vets in the middle of the desert, the Mojave Desert.
Oh, yeah.
And these were not religious guys. They just put it up because they wanted to remember the people who died. And so it's in the middle of 1.6 million acres of desert, and it's a lone little 7-foot cross, and the bottom with a plaque that has their VFW post number, and it just says, "For the dead of all wars." And it sat there for 70 years. And then the ACLU found out it was in the middle of the desert, and that was owned by federal government, and they brought a lawsuit. And they got, at the district court and court of appeals, they got a decision saying, yeah, tear it down, tear it down. At that point, we were contacted by the American Legion, the VFW, the Military Order of the Purple Heart, the American Ex-Prisoners of War, and we went to the Supreme Court. And one of the most scary things, I don't even know if we have it on our website, but I've shown this in public before, is while it was on appeal to the Supreme Court, the court ordered that it be covered. And we literally have this picture of this bag over this cross, this memorial, with a chain and a padlock around the bottom. And it's the creepiest thing you've ever seen in your life. But it went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court reversed. Okay, that memorial in the Mojave Desert is back up. So the Supreme Court dealt with this, and they dealt with it 5-4. That's the scary part. But Justice Kennedy, who's considered the swing vote, wrote an opinion, said there's nothing wrong with this. Said to tear monuments down because they have a religious imagery connected to them, that's hostility to religion. And so he, who's considered, kind of the swing vote in the middle, was very strong on this. So to strike down this, almost 100-year-old memorial right outside of Washington, D.C. in Bladensburg, Maryland, goes directly against that, in addition to the Ten Commandments decision, out of Texas, where there's a big Ten Commandments display right next to the Capitol. And the Supreme Court said, no, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, we don't have this brooding hostility where we sniff around and go, you know what, this is a country that has religious symbols, religious heritage, and so sometimes the symbols we use might be religious. We don't, ban all those. I mean, one of the greatest things you can get if you're in the Navy is the Navy Cross.
Well, they better change that.
Yeah,
that sounds unconstitutional.
We could go on and on and on. But this is so scary to me, though, because what it means for the rest of the country. I mean, this is a decision that immediately you turn and you look at Arlington National Cemetery, and you go, well. And again, read this opinion, right? Like you said, they're bothered that this is a cross and it's large. Okay? Well, there's a 20-foot cross in Arlington Memorial Cemetery. There's a 10-foot cross there. And then you start going into every community of every state, and the bulldozing, the sandblasting that we will see if this is not overturned, I think we'll be. We'll see it on TV. The shock, the talk about a sort of a civil war of values. I mean, I think people will react to this. I think this is unacceptable to a large, large percentage of Americans.
For our listeners, if you want to call in a comment on this case or other things we'll be talking about today, it's 1-800-351-1212. And you want to ask, you're not going to get too wonky and lawyery, but did the court in the Fourth Circuit opinion distinguish in some way the Supreme Court decision you just mentioned with relation to the cross in the desert?
Not really. What they tried to do is say that every case has its own context. Okay. So you have to look at each of these memorials by themselves. The problem with that is, there really aren't any unique facts about this one that make it problematic. What they really focused on was that it was big. And by the way, let me step back because people don't even know the history. When this was originally put up by the American Legion and these moms who gave money to, because it was their sons who died, it was on private land. The only reason that this ended up on government land is the government eventually built highways that went near it. And when it did, they took control of the land. And so that was, I think, 40 years ago or so. And so now somebody comes along, the American humanists, and they go, well, we can't have this on public land. And again, the answer is, well, why can't you? It's a memorial to people who died for our country. Put this year on the other foot or whatever. Let's say, Debbie, you and I are going down the street and we see a Star of David on public land. And we go and we look and we see that it's there because a bunch of Jewish soldiers gave their life for their country. I don't think we'd be yelling, tear it down. The intolerance of the other side and what they're trying to do really is bizarre, and it's something we've got to stop.
It's exactly what I was going to say. That it crosses a line, it's intolerance and really to hostility. And what you're seeing reflected in this Fourth Circuit decision is the notion that people who find religion offensive, like you mentioned, a plaintiff in this case in the Bladensburg cross was the American Humanist. What was it?
American Humanist Association, yeah.
And the other usual suspect or culprit is the ACLU, and then the Freedom from Religion.
Mm-hmm.
And what they're really saying is we as atheists, or whatever they want to designate themselves, or agnostics, we find references or symbols of religion so offensive that everybody else has to stop having them available or visible because we find them offensive. It's a hostility to religion that is just, it is unacceptable in America.
Well, and what's so funny, what's so twisted about it all is they don't even understand that if they got what they wanted, we would all lose our freedoms, including them. The reason that America is so different is that we think our liberties actually come from God, not from the government.
The Declaration of Independence.
It's right there in the Declaration, right? Because if your liberties come from the government, then they can take them away. And the other sort of aspect of this I would point out is when totalitarianism comes into a country, the one thing it can't really have exist are people who owe an allegiance to one higher than the government. So religion is a buffer between the government and the individual rights of its citizens. And so these people that think they're doing good by destroying religious symbols or being anti-religion or whatever, they're actually fighting against not only other people's freedoms, but their own freedoms, and they just don't even understand it.
Absolutely. I can see we have some callers, and you know what? I can see we have Catherine in AK, I think is Alaska. We would love to talk. We have about 1 minute in this segment, so if we can bring Catherine on, I will click the magic button. But Catherine, we have to keep it short because we have 1 minute in this segment. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, how are you today?
We are very well.
What I have to say is that we need to be praying. Revelations has warned us that this would happen worldwide. And as horrible as it is, it's here. The future is here. It is happening. Christians are being beheaded, and not just freedoms in the U.S. We need to pray and speak and act because we are in the last days, and hold fast to our faith. The idea is to destroy what God has created. And of the enemy, of course, these people who are trying to take away their own freedoms and ours, we need just to pray.
Catherine, thank you for that wonderful point, and thank you so much for calling Point of View today. Folks, we're going to zip off to a break and turn to more cases involving First Liberty and religious freedom. Don't go away.
From director Kevin Sorbo and executive producer Sean Hannity comes Let There Be Light. Saul Harkins is a man who has turned away from God, but a near-fatal car crash gives him one last chance to renew his life, his family, and his faith. Let There Be Light, rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13. In theaters October 27. More information is available at LetThereBeLightMovie.com.
Christianity is based in history, on evidence, and all truth revealed in God's Word is for our good, not just spiritually, but in every way. Point of View's mission is to restore God's truth in our culture, and to do it effectively, we need you as a partner. Your gift helps inspire people, young and old, from coast to coast to rebuild truth in their communities. Join the Truth Team today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. Get off the sidelines. Pointofview.net/team. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, your guest host for Point of View.
And welcome back. This is Debbie Georgatos. So happy to be sitting in today for Kirby Anderson on Point of View, and also to have on the roundtable with me Kelly Shackelford, President and CEO of First Liberty. Okay, so I want to go back to these First Liberty things. The Liberty cases. You had another one, and we have a caller first. Let me zip to this caller. A caller that's talking about the consequence in America potentially, and this is Bob in Georgia, of the having a Fourth Circuit decision like we have. So let me click them on. Hi, Bob.
How you doing?
We're very well. Welcome to Point of View.
Good. I just wanted to say that if this does go through, it's not going to be taken down. There will be physical resistance to that, and I just want to get to the point of why this is really happening. It's in John chapter 7, verse 7. He said, "The world cannot hate you, but it hates me because I testify about it that its works are evil." And that is the long and short of it. The whole reason why this is happening is because Christianity, the Bible, condemns the whole Bible, the Old Testament and the New Testament, condemns the behavior that the world wants to present as good and as acceptable and as normal, which is, it is not good, it is not acceptable, and it is not normal. It goes against nature, it goes against God, it goes against everything. And Christianity is the one that holds up the torch that says that goodness is goodness and evil is evil. And the world doesn't like it.
Bob, I have to jump in and say I agree with you. There is a lot of enmity. There's a carnal mind's enmity against God, but there's a lot of resistance within the, even in America, which is a country founded on Judeo-Christian ideas, and the roots of our notion of freedom come from the Bible. And this is the secular mind, the carnal mind, just saying, no way, you can't have a country like this. So, your other point, I'm going to turn to Kelly and ask him. I do think it's very likely people will not just agree that we're going to remove all religious symbols from America's public property. I think you may see some more physical resistance to this, but what do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I think if they try to take down this Veterans Memorial, there's going to be, some pretty serious outrage. The veterans will certainly probably be at the head of this. But I think a lot of citizens will be infuriated. The idea of this cross, which has been up for almost 100 years, being destroyed, it's just unthinkable. And again, within I think 40 miles, there's 4 others that would be very similar. And then you got Arlington National Cemetery. You've got all these others. I think people would erupt. I just don't think people would accept this. This is something that has to be overturned. This has to be overturned, and I think the Supreme Court will see that it has to be overturned, or the carnage, the bulldozing, they've got to be thinking. Let's say this goes up, and and the Supreme Court were to say, "Oh, this is okay." I don't think there's any way they would do that. They immediately see the TV cameras. Do you think when they bulldoze this memorial that there won't be a TV camera there? The whole country will see this.
And dozens of cell phones. People will be recording it, right?
This is the unthinkable, and this is a sacred symbol. And I don't mean because it's a Christian symbol. It's a Celtic cross. I mean it's a sacred symbol because of the lives of these people. It's like tearing down people's headstones.
Yep.
It's just infuriating. I do want to add though something to both. Bob and I think it was Catherine who called beforehand, and they said that we knew that these times would come, and prayer, very important to pray for our country. But I would point out if we did a poll on this in the country, in fact, last time we went to the Supreme Court when it was the Mojave Desert across, and we did a poll, 93% of the country said you leave that Veterans Memorial alone. I think it would be similar today. And so I think that there are a lot of people in this country who do believe the right things. I think it's a smaller minority who are trying to engage in this really bizarre changing of America. And I think that we need to be in prayer. But I think we have a chance, and I think people realize this. There's an opportunity to move our country back to what it really has always been, what it was founded upon. If you look at the judges being appointed, Gorsuch, the president has now nominated over 50 federal judges for life. Two of those people work for my organization. These are the kind of people, okay, who are being appointed. These are people who would be good judges, who would follow the Constitution, who would never veer. Don't give up on the country is what I'm saying. We can really turn the country, have that be part of the prayer, because while there will be an end times, I don't think the Lord ever wants us to push to get there quickly.
Amen to that.
He wants as much time as possible to bring as many to know Him.
Yes.
And I think we're being given an opportunity. It's just an opportunity to restore and hand our country to our children and our grandchildren like we had it more. And I think it's somewhat of a test as to whether we're going to do that or not. And it's not going to happen because we're sitting in our homes hoping that somebody else in the neighborhood will speak out or stand up, or we're all going to have to be faithful. Will you do it in a Christ-like manner? Absolutely. But we shouldn't stand for this situation. The whole community should be up in arms. There shouldn't be a judge who can avoid seeing it on TV because people are irate. They should express that this is wrong, and we will not stand silent while evil or wrong is being done.
I love that. I love you talked about this case being an opportunity, because it really is for many. If you think of the younger generation in America that's grown up in kind of increasing secularization, we don't have mentions. We have a lot of thought out there. We don't really have a lot of God and prayer in school. We don't pray together out loud in school like what we do when I was growing up. We used to say the Lord's Prayer in public school in Pennsylvania. So these younger people have seen this shift in America, and these cases are a great opportunity to remind the broad swath of Americans, people who do know what America is supposed to be, and people who maybe have gotten off track with all the political correctness, the hostility we were talking about a moment ago that is being reflected by these judges' decisions. It's an opportunity to re-engage people about the idea of America, and that it was not founded on separation of religion, of government and religion. It was not founded on atheism. It was really founded on these foundational biblical values, and that is really what made its greatness, contributed to its greatness. And so it's an opportunity to teach that and to correct some of the things that have been out there floating around the public thought for too long. Okay, we've been talking about the Supreme Court, and I see we have several callers. I just want to turn, and we'll come to you in just a moment, but I want to turn the discussion a little bit about where we are in the Supreme Court. So we have Justice Gorsuch, who's on the court now, and taking the place of Justice Scalia, and he's a conservative, and he's hanging in there with the freedoms that America is supposed to be founded on. But we really also have a big problem in Washington, in the Senate, with not moving nominations along quickly enough.
Yes.
So, and you're, especially Kelly, you're familiar with many of the nominees you mentioned a moment ago, with the openings, and the Supreme Court is one level that almost everyone focuses on. But beneath that, the federal district court, or the federal trial court level, the federal circuit courts of appeal, like the Fourth Circuit, the appellate courts, all of those seats are appointed by the president and must be confirmed by the Senate.
That's right.
And so we're in a troubling holding pattern right now in the Senate. We're going to get to it more I guess I want to start on that now. You want to tell our listeners where we are on that?
Real quickly, let me tell people first, because I've failed to mention this. If they want to get information on the Bladensburg case, see the picture, read the opinions, do all that, they can go to firstliberty.org. You spell out firstliberty.org. Same thing. It's not up yet because we're just putting the finishing touches. But in the next week, we will have up a page connect to our website. It'll be firstliberty.org, like courts. And it's going to show all the courts that are open, the people who are being nominated. Oh. It's going to have all of that. It's got almost all of it up now. We're just waiting until the final, everything is up, the bios of the people, because the president is literally filling about 160 seats for life, these federal judges. And what's happening right now is, and again, we won't have time to go in this in depth. We can do this after this segment, but By the time we get to Thursday of next week, 22 of those will be clogged, waiting for a vote on the floor. Why? Because there's something wrong with any of them, or somebody has an objection? No, because what's happening is the Democrats are using this approach where you say, well, we can have 30 minutes of arguments on any appointments of the president, and then that probably still wouldn't be a problem, but they're only meeting like 2 days a week. And so they're not getting through any of these people, and people are not getting into their seats. So it's something we can talk about.
More on this after the break. Don't go away.
The Harvey Weinstein story provides fresh evidence that Hollywood's feminist values do not make a better world for women. The open secret that Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein has been getting away with harassing and assaulting, even raping women for 3 decades has now been exposed. This is a tale of intimidation of young women, payoffs, a conspiracy of silence, and belated condemnations from major Hollywood players and powerful political figures. Feminist scolds Meryl Streep and Jane Fonda and many others have long articulated principles that Hollywood itself does not live by. In Hollywood, females are notoriously paid less than males. Sure, feminist actors, actresses, and many in Hollywood support abortion and are generous to Planned Parenthood, but just ask Harvey Weinstein's victims about the right to make decisions about your own body. We learned from Bill Clinton, it's easier to get away with abusing women if you say you embrace liberal and feminist causes. Harvey Weinstein did that. This past May, Weinstein pledged $100,000 to Planned Parenthood. Katrina Trinko of the Daily Signal wondered, shouldn't Hollywood be a liberal utopia? The investigative articles exposing Harvey Weinstein confirm it's not. Ms. Trinko points out that the New Yorker piece was written by Ronan Farrow, who was raised by Woody Allen, who continues to be tolerated by Hollywood after marrying his stepdaughter and being accused of child molestation by another daughter. Even Weinstein's now-defunct employment contract with the Weinstein Company upholds Hugh Hefner-style Playboy values. It spelled out that if sued for sexual harassment or any other misconduct, as long as Weinstein paid any settlements or judgments against him plus a fine, the company would take no action. At the 2013 Academy Awards, host Seth MacFarlane had some words for the Best Supporting Actress nominees. Congratulations! You 5 ladies no longer have to pretend to be attracted to Harvey Weinstein. That mostly feminist celebrity crowd laughed nervously. For Point of View, I'm Penna Dexter.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm Debbie Georgatos, filling in for Kirby Anderson, and we'll have in the studio, of course, Kelly Shackelford. We have a bunch of calls, so we're going to jump on the phone. And starting first with Scott, who's listening on the internet, that's good, from Missouri. Hi, Scott.
Hi, thanks for taking the call. You know, I hear about all of this, and it reminds me of the movie The Lion King. So I call it the Lion King syndrome, where everyone, there are people that rally around this sort of religious intolerance, and then it goes to such an extreme, as you were saying about the cross in Virginia, turning around and looking at Arlington Cemetery, and I think it gets to the point where people are like, this isn't going to work. And I call it the Lion King syndrome because of what happened in that movie where everybody eventually turned against this evil lion, and eventually he was dethroned, and common sense and stability was returned to the land. And I don't know what else to call it, but I'd like to hear what you have to say about it.
That's very clever. I like that too. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's great, because I think what Scott's saying is this a wake-up call that a lot of Americans needed? I mean, Americans who listen to Point of View, people of faith. You know, my wife and I were talking about this the other day. It's like, and I just challenge this to everybody who's listening. Think of your neighborhood. Okay, how many of those people go to church? And it's probably a lot. How many of those people would be willing to do anything publicly to stand that would be controversial? And all of a sudden, the neighborhood almost disappears. And this is the problem. We have all these people in the country who believe something, but if they're not willing to come out and stand, then we're going to have our memorials torn down. We're going to have our veterans' memorials torn down. We're going to have our country changed. Our kids and our grandkids are not going to get the country that we had, and they're not going to have the freedoms that we had. And so this, I hope Scott's right. I think there is a point. I don't know where it is. Maybe it's already started, where people go, this is enough. Okay, I'm not on the sidelines anymore. You know, if Jesus comes back tomorrow, I'm not holding a pom-pom sitting in the stands. I'm on the field. I'm on the field. And I got a saber in my hand. It's a saber of truth, but I've got a saber in my hands, and I'm going to do something. I really do hope, and I think things like Bladensburg and this Veterans Memorial, the idea of it being torn down, and Arlington Cemetery, and I think this is the type of thing that can definitely get people's attention and wake them up to the fact that it's time for me to get involved.
I couldn't agree more. I like the Lion King analogy. I hadn't thought about that, but I love the idea. And to Kelly's point, this is so true in so many aspects of America. It is that those who speak up, who are heard, they create the political culture. They dominate the conversation. And if you're not part of the conversation, somebody else is. And so you need to be part of it in your community, in your church, in your neighborhood, in your whatever it is you do, your book club. Be the one who speaks up and says, these are really dangerous times. We have to be the one speaking up. And this is very similar. You talked about an earlier caller was mentioning this notion of America changing and really having a more strident fight about this issue. It's a similar thing that's happening with respect to the removal of the Robert E. Lee statues and removal of anything related to Confederate. It is the destruction of the identity of America, the history of America. And people are saying, no, actually, not okay. We're going in Dallas, where we happen to be in Dallas. We had that happen here, but these battles are happening around the country. And to speak up and say, no, we honor our history. Doesn't mean we agree with everything Robert E. Lee did. And we can even say, shouldn't have done, we wish there hadn't been a Civil War. But you cannot allow those who do not love the idea of America to destroy the symbol of its culture, of its religion, of its history. And I agree, people will fight. Okay, we have a couple other calls I'll quickly take here. We have, Virgil in Texas. Hello, sir.
Well, hello. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure, go right ahead. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. What I want to say is this business of what the church should be doing, what the people should be doing about standing up. I want to point out the fact that we have churches across America, Christian churches, and I'll use an example given by Jim Cymbala of Brooklyn Tabernacle in a book he wrote. A pastor comes to a church. He's just coming in as a new pastor, and the day he gets there, the choir director has the choir sing 3 songs about the blood of Jesus. Following that service, he takes that choir director back to his office and says, I'm the pastor of this church, and there won't be any more blood songs sung while I'm the pastor of this church. If I hear one, you'll be fired. Now, I'll go one more step with that. There's a family called the Collinsworth family. They sing wonderful gospel songs across America, wonderful songs about the blood of Jesus. And the mother, Kim Collinsworth, on stage just a month or so ago, said, we're getting repeated calls from churches to come and sing our music, but they say, don't sing any blood songs. And she told her husband, Phil Collinsworth, she said, we're going to take those invitations. And when we get there, we're going to sing twice as many blood songs.
Okay,
Now,
Virgil, I got to jump in, because we're going to run out of time here in this segment, but I appreciate that thought and the very notion that in some churches, it appears that pastors kind of want to have the everything sweet and light kind of messaging, I think is your point, and you need to have churches digging into the substance, the depth of the scriptures of Christian truth, and even if it's a little bit awkward or uncomfortable for people, you want the church to be standing for all that Christianity stands for.
Yeah, look, the simplicity that I would lay out is Christianity is about two things. It's about grace and truth. And sometimes people just want to be the love and grace side without the truth side, and that's just not Christianity. That's not Jesus. He actually caused a little trouble by being truthful, and he actually hurt some feelings, not in his manner, but because he spoke the truth. And we have got to be willing to do that. And so, I'm going to put some legs on what I said earlier about people standing up. One way you can stand up is you're listening to Point of View. Do you support Point of View, right? Go to pointofview.net. Make sure, I forget what it is. It's maybe for every one person who, makes a donation. Is it 80 people or 800? Or it's a huge number of people that you're causing that they get to hear it on another station. So I would encourage people to go to pointofview.net, support Point of View so that this information can get out. Secondly, are you involved with First Liberty Institute? Did you know yesterday about Bladensburg because you were on our email alert and you got it, and you've already gotten it out to your friends and they already know about it, because you can begin to educate people. And that's a way you can stand up, and that's a way you can get the word out. So connect to these organizations. I know everybody can't know everything and follow everything, and so connect in a way where you can have a voice, where you can support the things that are going on, and like you can support Bladensburg in the fact that we're going to get this thing overturned. I mean, God willing, this fight is not over. There are lots of ways, and I don't just think, hey, yeah, if I get a chance, maybe I'll stand up. I'm saying connect now. Do something now. Connect. Be the information source. Get this information to your friends and start standing up in that way. And make sure your church, as the caller is saying, make sure that your church is doing the same. I mean, our pastors, that's how this country really was started, is pastors and their leadership for the truths and the principles that this country was built upon. And we need, more than ever, we need them to be leaders today and be willing to stand up for what the truth says.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you mentioned Kelly, and I'll repeat for our listeners, go to pointofview.net and donate to support this cause, and go to firstliberty.org and donate there too, and also come back right after the break.
Sometimes I joke that I'll win the lottery when God blows the winning ticket across a parking lot to me. I don't buy tickets, so if he wants me to win, that's the way. Pretty silly, right? But a lot of us take a similar stance when it comes to the ills of our culture. We don't do anything. We simply hope things will change. I encourage you to get in the game and make things change. Join Truth Team 360 and be part of a work that changes lives and communities. Visit pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151.
From Paramount Pictures and PureFlix comes Same Kind of Different as Me. Ron and Debbie Hall have everything they could ever want, except for a loving marriage. But when Debbie befriends a homeless man, their lives begin to intersect, and they are all changed forever.
Amazing how far a little tender love and care can go.
Same Kind of Different as Me, based on the true story. In theaters October 20th, rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13. More information is available at samekindofdifferentasmemovie.com.
Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kirby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kirby Anderson. You know, each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, your guest host for Point of View.
And welcome back to Point of View. Debbie Georgatos filling in for Kirby Anderson. I have Kelly Shackelford on the round table today with me. We've been talking about the Fourth Circuit decision, the federal appellate court decision that essentially said that had a cross that is part of a memorial for World War I casualties must be removed because it's a religious symbol in public property. And so we're going to shift over in a minute to talk about another case involving religious liberty, and that First Liberty is involved. And I first want to go a couple of our callers about the monuments. One is Andrea in North Carolina. Hi, Andrea.
Hey, thank you, Debbie. Yeah, and I know this is old news, but you know, people attack the symbols, you know, and then the statutes behind the symbols. Kelly, I appreciate everything that you do. Speak to where you think we're headed. My goodness gracious, the baker and the florist and same-sex marriage is legal, you know, in June 2015. Now why does it take so long? You know, the baker, the florist, Kim Davis in Rowan County, Kentucky, clerk of court. I mean, it just goes on and on. I mean, it's taken, but fight on the front lines. Where are we going now? Where are we headed with this stuff? Where are we headed, Kelly?
Great question. Thank you. Go ahead, Kelly.
And the answer is it depends. It really does. It depends on us. And I'm these are not platitudes. I've been doing this for 29 years, these kinds of cases, and we are in an incredibly unique time right now. I mean, I'm not going to take up all the time where I could explain this in detail, but I am telling you, we are fighting right now for whether we will have religious freedom, period, in this country or not in the future. I think in the next 5 years, maybe at the most 10 years, we're either going to save it for our children and our grandchildren, or it's going to be gone. For the very reasons that, Andrea, that you're saying. I mean, if, for instance, take the Baker case, which is at the Supreme Court, and it's about whether the government can force the baker to make the gay wedding cake. If that case comes down and says, the government can force you to violate your faith, it doesn't matter. The way that will be read in the future is religious freedom falls whenever whatever the popular issue of the day that has the most support wins. Well, then there's no religious freedom. The whole point of religious freedom is the ability to live out and express your faith when the government and everybody else disagrees with your faith. It's kind of like saying you have free speech as long as I agree with your speech.
Yeah.
So we're really fighting. And if some would question me, I would challenge you. Tell me one state in the United States right now where you can pass a basic religious freedom amendment in the legislature. There's not a single state. This is so controversial now. So we are really in a battle. And that sounds kind of negative, but it's just the truth. The great news is I really do feel like we were given somewhat of a reprieve. If Hillary Clinton were president and had appointed the justice instead of Gorsuch, I think a lot of these issues would be over. That's not what happened. Scalia was replaced by Gorsuch, who is a very strong, he's written some excellent opinions on religious freedom. The president will probably have another chance or two to replace somebody else, maybe 2 more. That court, do you change that court by 1? You already are change it by 2? Even 1, literally, Roe v. Wade could be over, right? Think of how quickly we're talking about here. So when Andrea asked, where are we going? I mean, the culture is still, that's going to be reflective of we need a revival in this country. We need our we need the Spirit to move and that to happen. But with freedom, there's more opportunity for that. And we'd really have an opportunity country-wise to really make some changes that will set the freedoms in place for our children and our grandchildren where that's an opportunity. And it's going to depend upon us. It's going to depend on these judicial appointments. It's going to depend upon people willing to stand up when they see these things happening. Because if you don't, the bully's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and then your kids and your grandkids are going to have no chance because the bully's going to be a monster. And we will not have beaten the bully when we should have, when they came at the beginning and tried to take down our veterans' memorials, and we could keep going with the other examples.
This is an interesting aspect of all this, but there has been a growth in the hostile secularization. Just the idea that, that religious freedom in America has always meant that people of religious faith could practice their faith, live their faith, and that there would be a notion that you pretty much respect everyone else's right to do the same thing and to change your religion, do whatever, you really had that liberty. But secularization, the kind of propping up of the notion that we have there's an equal right of the secularists or the atheists to not just live their lives, but to actually force others who don't agree with them to be silenced. I mean, it's a very aggressive thing that is, again, we were talking about how these cases kind of help the discussion in America. I think when people say even a few years ago, people say religious freedom is under threat, you hear a lot of Americans say, oh, come on, aren't you being a little bit hysterical here? Isn't it a little bit extreme? But I think these kind of cases help people to see there really is a strident secular effort in America to make sure that religion is treated as something kind of like a decoration or something you do in the privacy of your own home or your church, but it can't matter in your life. And on the Bohannon? Oh, sure. We have another case from First Liberty that we were talking about in the break, so go right ahead.
Yeah, this is another example. Colonel Bohannon is I mean, in my view, he's a hero. U.S. Air Force Academy graduate, 3,300 flight hours, including combat missions in Iraq and Afghanistan's awards and decorations include the Bronze Star, the Defense Meritorious Service Award, the Air Medal. Brigadier General rated him #1 of 11 colonels under his command. I mean, I could just keep going and going and going. And this is his most recent assignment was oversight of the Nuclear Surety Inspection Program. That's a pretty important job, and listed as the best of the best. So why am I mentioning this guy? Because he was asked to do a retirement ceremony. Somebody was retiring, and he was asked to sign the certificate for that person's spouse. Well, that person was a male, and their spouse was a male. And he, as a Christian, he was like, ooh, I got a problem with this. So he went to the JAG, the lawyer, and said, I know there's religious accommodations. How do I deal with this if I have a religious objection? Because I want the guy to get his certificate, and I want everything to be okay, but there's no reason for me to have to participate. Well, they refused to answer his question. So he didn't have any answer. So he went out on his own, and instead of him as a colonel signing it, which he had a problem with, he went and found a 2-star general. And he said, will you sign this for this man? He said, absolutely, I'll sign it. I don't have any problem with that. So he actually did a better thing. But they found
higher ranking person.
Yes, yeah. Higher ranking. But they found out that he didn't sign it. And so his career is now over. They've put a letter in the file. They said, do not promote. They've said, you're done. Again, this is a very important position. We're harming our military because of this. And it's all because of an anti-religious freedom bent that's even made it into our military, in this case, the Air Force.
Strident secularization, cannot have it. Debbie Georgatos, Point of View, come right back.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
America's at a turning point, and we live in a world of uncertainty and fear. We need real answers and courage to stand strong. We need a vision of hope that reignites the fervor and courageous faith that once existed in this republic. That is the message of Jason Jimenez and Alex McFarland in their book, Stand Strong America. The authors remind us of how Christianity shaped the founding of America. They explain how biblical values were incorporated into the Declaration and Constitution, and they correct the inaccurate description of what was meant by a separation of church and state. They also remind us that America is under attack from a number of different directions. First, there is the gay agenda that has been used to shut down Christian businesses and marginalize Christian influence. There's also the threat of radical Islam, as well as the impact of militant secularism is having in our country. The authors not only provide a diagnosis of the problems facing America, but they also give a biblical prescription for action. They explain what we must do to develop a more perfect union. Their goal is to encourage and empower readers with a clear and invigorating message that will challenge them to love God, cherish freedom, pray for a better tomorrow, make a difference, and stand strong. The 13 chapters in the book, along with discussion questions, can be used in churches and small groups. Christians want to know about these issues. The authors remind us of a study by George Barna that found that churchgoers want to hear more about how to apply biblical principles to contemporary issues. They list these top 12 issues that range from abortion to sexual identity to Islam. It's time for all of us to take a stand and make a difference in society. This book will enable all of us to be more effective in our witness to the world. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Based on the incredible true story and best-selling book from Paramount Pictures and PureFlix comes Same Kind of Different as Me, rated PG-13, now playing.
You're listening to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. Debbie Georgatos. I'm here filling in, having so much fun filling in for Kirby Anderson. I have Kelly Shackelford here at round table with me. And we're going to switch gears a little bit here, but just to wrap up from the last segment, you were hearing the story, the new case that First Liberty is representing, Colonel Leland Bohannon, who is in trouble with the military just because he did not want to sign a card for a same-sex spouse. I mean, sign off on a card to say, thank you. Even who cares what the card says? But I want Kelly, tell you one moment what you can do about this. But I just want to mention this aspect of this. The aggressiveness on behalf of the LGBT advocates in this country to this extent where he's now got this person his spouse has a card signed by a higher ranking officer. Nothing bad happened to him. There was no punishment. There was no singling out. There was no embarrassment. But he managed to dig in and discover that the person who normally would have signed this wasn't the one who signed it. And so that is why Bohannon is in trouble in the military. And just I'm making the point about the extreme aggressiveness of the LGBT community to demand that everyone salute to their view of marriage, and the absolute unwillingness of frankly the American left to respect the notion that other people have strongly held views too, such as Christians. And so somehow we can find a way to accommodate both, or we did for a long time, but now we can't anymore. So I would love to have you share, if you would, please.
Yeah. Well, number one, I would say, we're representing Colonel Bohannon, and the law was violated here. We have not only attorneys on staff who understand the Constitution, but Mike Berry, who was a JAG, who actually taught at the Naval Academy, so understands the military law And there's all kinds of violations in what they did to the colonel, and we're going to fight for him, and we're going to get this overturned. If people wonder where they can get information on it, they can go to firstliberty.org, and you spell it out, firstliberty.org, and look for the Bohannon case. You can find it under our cases, and you can see all the information yourself. It's just sad that this would happen to not only a guy who served us for so many years, but so valiantly and was such. I mean, he was the best of the best, and so we're sacrificing the quality of our military even over this stuff, and this is just wrong. So we're hopeful, certainly, and we're not going to stop until we do everything in our power to make sure that Colonel Bohannon has this reversed, and he should be proceeding above. This is the kind of guy we want at the very top.
Yeah. You know, this is an example similar to the case we were talking about in the first hour about the challenge to the right of just having a cross standing as part of a memorial or a military memorial on public property, and people find that unacceptable. It is this notion of just intolerance of the value of religion in America, intolerance for religious symbols, for carrying out your faith in your life. And this is, the notion that in the military of all places, you have people in the military who think this is the way to stand up for what's right, to punish somebody who doesn't want to sign a card to a same-sex spouse, and to honor the demand by the LGBT advocate for the man who was wanting to have his husband card signed. So the default preference in the military is you better honor the demand of the LGBT guy and crush the religious liberty of the person who's saying no thank you. This is what we talk about. You say about speaking up. This notion that this is part of the political, social culture of America, that we've elevated the rights and demands of the LGBT same-sex marriage advocates to the exclusion of those who are trying to assert their religious freedom. And that's why people have to speak up. Okay, I want to jump to John Kelly's story. Were you going to say something else? Okay. So, if you haven't been paying attention to the news at all, you know that in the past few days, President Trump placed a phone call to a woman who lost her husband. He was one of the servicemen lost in that recent battle in Niger. So President Trump placed a call to Maisha Johnson, whose husband, Sergeant Law David Johnson, died in this Islamic State ambush in Niger. And so he placed the call, and a congresswoman was in the car listening. A Democrat congresswoman from Florida was in the car, who also happens to be African-American. Now, Representative Frederica Wilson heard the call that Trump made, and she has made a firestorm of attack media claiming that President Trump spoke in an insensitive manner to this widow who just had lost her husband. And she continues to attribute to President Trump this evil, evil message. He said in this phone call to the woman that Johnson, the military man who died in the service of our country, that she said she heard him insensitively say that Johnson, quote, knew what he signed up for, close quote. So I want to go to a clip. So yesterday, the Chief of Staff, the White House Chief of Staff, General John Kelly, made a statement. If you haven't heard this statement, you need to listen to the entire, I think it's 17 minutes or something, statement. Profound, poignant, and it was a thorough rebuke of the antics that this Representative Frederica Wilson conjured up. So I'm going to play, it's a pretty lengthy segment. I'm going to play what John Kelly said, and then we're going to talk about it. Are you ready with the clip? Okay.
I said to him, sir, there's nothing you can do to lighten the burden on these families. But let me tell you what I tell them. And let me tell you what my best friend, Joe Dunford, told me, because he was my casualty officer. He said, Kel, he was doing exactly what he wanted to do when he was killed. He knew what he was getting into by joining that 1%. He knew what the possibilities were because we're at war. And when he died, in the 4 cases we're talking about, Niger, my son's case in Afghanistan, when he died, he was surrounded by the best men on this earth, his friends. That's what the president tried to say to 4 families the other day. I was stunned when I came to work yesterday morning and brokenhearted at what I saw a member of Congress doing. A member of Congress who listened in on a phone call from the President of the United States to a young wife. and in his way tried to express that opinion. He's a brave man, a fallen hero. He knew what he was getting himself into because he enlisted. There's no reason to enlist. He enlisted. And he was where he wanted to be, exactly where he wanted to be, with exactly the people he wanted to be with when his life was taken. That was the message. That was the message that was transmitted. It stuns me that a member of Congress would have listened in on that conversation. Absolutely stuns me. And I thought at least that was sacred. You know, when I was a kid growing up, a lot of things were sacred in our country. Women were sacred and looked upon with great honor. That's obviously not the case anymore, as we see from recent cases. Life, the dignity of life, was sacred. That's gone. Religion, that seems to be gone as well. Gold Star families, I think that left in the convention over the summer. But I just thought the selfless devotion that brings a man or woman to die on the battlefield, I just thought that that might be sacred. And when I listened to this woman and what she was saying and what she was doing on TV, the only thing I could do to collect my thoughts was to go and walk among the finest men and women on this earth. And you can always find them because they're in Arlington National Cemetery.
And that, if you didn't hear the introduction to that, was the Chief of Staff in the White House, General John Kelly.
Who lost his son.
Yeah, I was about to say, I forgot to say that in the introduction. So he was, in recounting to the media, this was a really profound presentation he made to the media. It wasn't a normal press conference at all. He had lost his son, was recounting the telephone call he got. And you know, to be clear on the facts, because they matter so much. And you know, there was a just media firestorm, a Twitter firestorm, just hysteria on the internet over the claim that President Trump went out of his way to call a widow, a woman who had just lost her husband in the service of our country, and treat her in some cavalier, mean-spirited way. And again, what this congresswoman listening in on the call from the president to this young widow claimed that what was said by Trump was, you know, that he insensitively said to this woman, Mrs. Johnson, that her husband, knew what he signed up for. The thing is, even with Kelly, when I even read that headline before John Kelly's speech, I could imagine exactly why he said that, and because
right.
you're honoring the person who's lost their lives, who lost his life. You're appreciating that he knew the risks and he knew what he. So I raise all this because I think it's really important to understand how far gone our media is. Number one, how much vicious, just vile, irrational hatred is directed toward President Trump. How much willingness to contort anything good and noble. In fact, among the many things John Kelly spoke about was, you know, the president doesn't have to call these widows. I mean, and some presidents do, some don't, some may call, depends on the number of people. We come back, we're going to talk more about John Kelly and what this says about America and how you should fight back about it.
From director Kevin Sorbo and executive producer Sean Hannity comes Let There Be Light. Saul Harkins is a man who has turned away from God, but a near-fatal car crash gives him one last chance to renew his life, his family, and his faith. Let There Be Light, rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13. In theaters October 27. More information is available at LetThereBeLightMovie.com.
Christianity is based in history, on evidence, and all truth revealed in God's Word is for our good, not just spiritually, but in every way. Point of View's mission is to restore God's truth in our culture, and to do it effectively, we need you as a partner. Your gift helps inspire people, young and old, from coast to coast to rebuild truth in their communities. Join the Truth Team today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. 800-347-5151. Get off the sidelines. Pointofview.net/team. Point of View will continue after this.
are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again, your guest host for Point of View.
Hey there, welcome back, and thanks so very much for tuning in to Point of View. Just having a great time here today. Very, very glad Kelly Shackelford is here with me to talk about the issues of the day. So we played just before the break, we played a short segment of a 17 or so minute speech that the Chief of Staff, John Kelly, made to the room of journalists talking about how egregious it is that President Trump's phone call to a grieving widow, in which he expressed the thought that which was expressed to General Kelly when he and his wife received their call about their son who was killed in action in Afghanistan. So this effort to make a hysterical accusation about President Trump, and you know that has made its mark already in the media. It'd be one of the things you'll hear people saying, well, that time he said to the widow, he said he knew what he signed up for, as though he was cavalierly dismissing the death of this young soldier. So it was a brilliant and eloquent thing. One other thing I meant to mention, Kelly, I love that he did at the end of the thing. He said, to all this room of journalists who pretty much are endlessly piling on President Trump, just said, so how many of you out there are Gold Star families? And no hands go up. How many even know a Gold Star family? And then a few hands went up. So that's who he let ask questions, people who knew Gold Star families. He's kind of saying, can we resurrect the idea that we treasure our military and we are grateful for people who serve? I mean, it was just a fabulous thing. And I think it has knocked the knees out, I think, or knocked the legs out from underneath this effort to paint Trump. In fact, Frederica Wilson, the congresswoman who's been just spouting off and mouthing off about Trump, said today, I'm done talking about this.
Yeah, well, she's a disgrace. I mean, what she did, what she said is, shameful. Doesn't even come to the level. It's got to be careful what you say, because it's just so disgusting what she did. For those who don't know, didn't see the whole thing, I do suggest they go back and look at General Kelly's statement. He was very gracious, really, in the way he even expressed his being stunned and his really, he didn't say this word, but really disgust for what Congressman Wilson did. And what he did is he pointed out, number one, and he didn't do this directly, he did it very graciously. His son died when President Obama was president. President Obama did not call him, okay? And he said, and that's fine, presidents don't call everybody. He said typically they write letters because, to be honest, there's nothing that the president can really do that lessens the load of what's just happened to them. And so he actually advised President Trump, these 4 guys who just died, he said, I'm advising you not to make phone calls because I just don't think it lessens the load, and it's very difficult. President Trump said, I feel like I should call them. To me, that there says something. Look, President Trump does not do things in a, Judeo-Christian way all the time, okay?
Or traditional way, yeah.
He's said things, done things, caught on video things. He's certainly a sinner, as we all are, and he's a little more, over the line than others, right? But that doesn't mean that and this is what the other side is, because they've seen some of that behavior. They just want to assume the worst and create the worst, even when there's very good motives. And here, he was doing something very, I think, very valiant. He knew it was going to be difficult to call these families. He knew he wasn't going to lessen their load, but he felt a responsibility to do it anyway. And he asked General Kelly, what do I say?
Yeah.
That's humility, okay? This is not a guy who's known for his humility, but this is a guy that clearly feels the weight that he's calling somebody who's just lost their son to our country, for the sake of our country. And he did it the best way he could. In fact, he did it the way General Kelly told him. And that's what he was criticized for by this congresswoman that's listening into his call and then uses it to try to attack him. It's It's just beyond the pale. It really is. And I think I'm hoping, I doubt it will, you would hope it would be a wake-up call to the people who have kind of gotten into this, I don't know, they've locked into this deal that this guy disgusts me and I'm just going to treat him with disgust and I'm never going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to assume the worst. Maybe this will shake them out of the fact that, you know what, he's a human being too. And he's our president, and we respect the office, and we might not agree with everything he does, but, you know, I can't be, I hope everybody goes, I cannot be like this Congressman Wilson. That I don't ever want to see a picture of myself looking like that, because I can't think of anything lower than to try to take advantage of families who've lost their son to the war, and a president who's trying to do, and he doesn't have to do this at all. And so I thought General Kelly, being a person who had the personal experience of losing his son under the past president and knowing what this is like, I thought that was one of the most powerful 17 minutes I've ever watched. And I thought it was a real wake-up call. And part of what he said was, I think, something that every point of view listener would really resonate with. There used to be some things that were sacred in this country, and it seems like we've lost them. And he listed how we treat women. He listed religious freedom. He listed the respect for life. You know, all those things. Here's what I would say to point of view listeners. All those things can change. We can turn back to respect for those things. We can turn all that around. God can turn all that around. With one breath of his mouth in this country, a wind could blow and all of this could change. And we just need to all do our part to try to get back to that. And I do think there are a lot of opportunities, certainly right now, with the judges and other things that can allow for those freedoms to move us there. But it was very powerful, I thought. Very powerful.
Oh, it was an amazing, it was a sombering thing, and really the media, who usually can't wait to interrupt, they really sat there pretty quietly and listened. One little thing about this, this widow of this young man who was killed by ISIS, there was a protocol that General Kelly described in his speech, where he basically said, you know, we don't just pick up the phone and call the person, but there's a protocol always followed that you have someone who calls the family, someone else in the order of things in Washington, who says, the president would like to call you to express his condolences. Would you accept his call? Because maybe somebody say, no, I'm you know, whatever
just
reason
too
I
much.
have,
Right.
I can't. Yeah, but she wanted to. She accepted this call, and I think that's another tenderness of it all, is that, you know, she wanted to hear from him, or at least, you hate to think she was trying to set him up, but she wanted to hear from him. But then she had the phone available to have this whole thing politically exploited. And where I wanted to go with this today, with this story, was I think there are so many different aspects in American political culture today that are just premised on racial division, and they are the NFL protest, people who are kneeling or locking arms or in some other way not showing respect for the national anthem and the flag. We have the removal of the Robert E. Lee statues and just any memorials or even things named after someone who was involved in the Civil War on the southern side. And there just seems to be a determination by many, and I'm just going to go with on the American left and in the media, to paint America's divided and to exacerbate or put salt in the wound, to continue to present issues and stories and cases from the premise that, well, there's a big racial divide, there's a lot of racism in this country. And that is something else that listeners to this show and people who just love America need to be fighting back against, because I don't think that America is nearly as divided as is argued by the left and is presented by the media. I think that most people, they want the police to handle every situation fairly and to the best of their ability. They like to see their heroes in the NFL standing for the national anthem, but this case involving this congresswoman who got so much publicity over trying to mischaracterize President Trump's call to a widow, American military, a loss of our military, and the call to the widow. trying to exploit that into, because she ended up saying that Trump's reaction was racist and called other people racist connected with it. And I really think there's such a great role to play for Christians and people who love this country to just fight back against that picture of America that we're a racially divided nation.
Yeah, I think we're not nearly as divided. I think people tend to believe if people turned on TV, if somebody came from another planet and turned on TV and started watching the sitcoms, they would probably assume that like 40% of America is gay, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
they would get a really different picture of sort of reality, and I think people are getting that way with a lot of media loves controversy. They love it, and I think are there liberals and conservatives in the country? Sure, there are. But I think there are very few of these people who are sort of fomenting anarchy, and they're being allowed to sort of take over the discussion. And I think the people of goodwill across the board need to stand up and say, we're not going to have any more of that.
Enough of that. Amen to that. Come right back.
The Harvey Weinstein story provides fresh evidence that Hollywood's feminist values do not make a better world for women. The open secret that Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein has been getting away with harassing and assaulting, even raping women for 3 decades has now been exposed. This is a tale of intimidation of young women, payoffs, a conspiracy of silence, and belated condemnations from major Hollywood players and powerful political figures. Feminist scolds Meryl Streep and Jane Fonda and many others have long articulated principles that Hollywood itself does not live by. In Hollywood, females are notoriously paid less than males. Sure, feminist actors, actresses, and many in Hollywood support abortion and are generous to Planned Parenthood, but just ask Harvey Weinstein's victims about the right to make decisions about your own body. We learned from Bill Clinton, it's easier to get away with abusing women if you say you embrace liberal and feminist causes. Harvey Weinstein did that. This past May, Weinstein pledged $100,000 to Planned Parenthood. Katrina Trinko of the Daily Signal wondered, shouldn't Hollywood be a liberal utopia? The investigative articles exposing Harvey Weinstein confirm it's not. Ms. Trinko points out that the New Yorker piece was written by Ronan Farrow, who was raised by Woody Allen, who continues to be tolerated by Hollywood after marrying his stepdaughter and being accused of child molestation by another daughter. Even Weinstein's now-defunct employment contract with the Weinstein Company upholds Hugh Hefner-style Playboy values. It spelled out that if sued for sexual harassment or any other misconduct, as long as Weinstein paid any settlements or judgments against him plus a fine, the company would take no action. At the 2013 Academy Awards, host Seth MacFarlane had these. Congratulations, you 5 ladies no longer have to pretend to be attracted to Harvey Weinstein. That mostly feminist celebrity crowd laughed nervously. For Point of View, I'm Penna Dexter.
Now, back to Point of View, your listener-supported source for truth.
And welcome back to Point of View. I'm Debbie Georgatos, sitting in for Kirby Anderson. Have Kelly Shackelford from First Liberty here with me today. You know, we mentioned earlier, and I want to say it again, this is not a Point of View is not supported by the government or any other entity. It is really supported by listeners like you. And if you love listening every day, as I'm sure many of you do, please consider donating to Point of View. You go to pointofview.net. And every day when you listen to the show, you can go to the website and we put links up to the articles we've talked about. because it is easier sometimes if you read them yourselves and embrace more of the details and get them straight, to talk about them, to share them. So I urge you to do that. And also Kelly Shackelford sitting here, and he is with First Liberty, president and CEO of First Liberty, and they are just a nationwide powerhouse organization representing people making claims relating to religious liberty, and they are just on the ground in many cases. We talk about them here, and you can learn much more about them on their website. I love to go just to kind of cruise their website once in a while and find out the latest things happening. Great website. I will also make a plug for my own website and radio show. On Sunday evenings, my show, which is called America Can We Talk, is on Sunday evenings from 6 to 8 p.m. Central Time. So it's once a week, Sunday 6 to 8, but it's on a Salem station here in Dallas. If you happen to be here at 6:60 a.m., it's on in Phoenix. 960 The Patriot, and on in Colorado Springs. And I can't believe I can't think of the call letters, but on in Colorado Springs, also in Salem. But you can also watch on Facebook. If you go to Facebook Live to America Can We Talk, just America Can We Talk, you can watch the show every Sunday on Facebook, and we talk about a lot of the issues similar to the ones we talk about here. And great guests. And also you can go to americacanwetalk.org, and the links are up probably to everything we talked about today and other things by Sunday. So love to get the chance to talk with you every week on my show and whenever I'm invited to join on Point of View. Okay, so I want to go back and finish one more little point. We listened to John Kelly's statement, and it was really wonderful, speaking to the press and speaking to America, really, about how absurd it has become that President Trump is being criticized for a lovely call he made to a widow who's obviously grieving, has lost her husband. And so the effort was made to characterize it as nasty and that he was kind of mean-spirited, and he made some just insensitive remark. Another widow, and this is not up on the website, but you can find this story if you're interested in reading it. But another widow whose name is Natasha D. Elenkar, not sure of the pronunciation, but she lost her husband also, who was killed in Afghanistan earlier in the year, and she got a call from President Trump, and she happened to record it and save it. And so she has put it out, and this call obviously makes clear what exactly these calls are all about. The call that this widow put out from President Trump, she is in the Washington Examiner. You can hear the article called "Widow Releases Trump's Call After Her Husband Was Killed in Afghanistan." I mean, it's just lovely, gracious. So sorry if you're lost. If you're ever in Washington, you'd love to meet you. Come to the White House. Just a lovely statement. And obviously, just sit back and think for a moment how absurd the idea is that President Trump would make the difficult decision to call someone who's obviously grieving. I don't even like calling people when I know they're grieving, because I know a lot of people want privacy. They don't really want to have to talk with you. But he's speaking out, reaching out on behalf of America because her husband lost his life in service of America. And the notion that somehow it would be filled with cavalier, insensitive statements is so absurd. But anyway, you can read that too. So since we have time, you want to add to that?
No. I think what General Kelly did yesterday was powerful. I think anybody who hasn't listened to it, I challenge them to go and just look at it on your computer later. I think everybody should see it. I think it's a reminder of what our country is really about, what it's like, and what our heart's like, and that this kind of thing needs to be called out so that no one would do anything like this again.
Yes, they need to be embarrassed. Okay, so last thing, since we had a bunch of religious liberty cases that I had printed out. We could never get to all of them, but I want to share one more and actually ask Kelly to share with you about it. And the reason in part is because, we talk on this program so often about persecution of Christianity in America. And I do think Christianity is under siege in many ways in America, but First Liberty also works on cases that do not involve Christians. In fact, there's a case that I thought would be interesting to have you hear about today that relates to people practicing their Jewish faith, and that was threatened by, wasn't it threatened by animal rights people?
Yes,
Whatever it was. Will you tell the story about that case?
Yeah, I can't tell the whole story because we've actually had 4 or 5 different litigations on it so far. But where this started was, this is an Orthodox Jewish synagogue. It's Chabad of Irvine outside of California, outside of L.A. in California, and Yom Kippur, which of course even Christians are aware of Yom Kippur. Well, one of the traditional ceremonies goes over 1,100 years. Involves the killing of a chicken, the atonement, the blood atonement, right, for sins. And it's done in a very kosher and humane way, but it's killing of a chicken. Well, animal rights groups didn't like this idea. And so, I mean, this is my little joke, but instead of going to Chick-fil-A and complaining about them, who's killing lots of chickens, they decided they went into federal court, kid you not, and got an injunction to stop this religious service that had been done for over 1,100 years. I want you to think about that. The court, the government coming into your church or synagogue and telling you that you have to change your religious ceremonies, or you can't perform the religious ceremony you've done for 1,100, 1,200 years. We had to act quickly because Yom Kippur was coming up, and we had less than 24 hours to get briefs, fly to people across the country to get into an emergency hearing with this judge. And the good news is, within, I think, 30 minutes of the sun going down and Yom Kippur beginning, we actually reversed that. This animal rights, I mean, really extremist group. I mean, I can't describe. In fact, if you go to our website at firstliberty.org, I think one of the first things that pops up is you can watch the video and you can see the protest. These people are not what you're thinking with. I mean, they have got big signs. They're angry. They're violent. I mean, you look at what they're. This is a really scary group of people, and so they didn't give up. They filed another. They filed an appeal. They filed in federal court. They filed in state court. We've been defending this poor synagogue in all of these situations. They even filed, the most recent case was before, the Yom Kippur here, and this time of season, they filed against the police in the area and said that they're not doing their job, and they asked for the authority. This is in what they filed with the judge. They said that they, therefore, would act as citizen police, go into the synagogue and physically themselves arrest and stop the ceremony. So, I mean, that's very dangerous. We actually had to go in and say, hold on a second here. So that's just one of our cases with Jewish synagogues. We believe in religious freedom, and that's for everybody. And, Christians, if they want religious freedom, you have to have religious freedom for people who aren't Christians. That doesn't mean they have a right. Everybody's like, what about the Muslims? Does that mean they have a right to Sharia law? Well, no, you can't violate the Constitution, okay? But if a Muslim wants the right to pray, we would fight for their right to pray, right? They have a right to pray, just like your kids have a right to pray. So it's religious freedom. That's what the country was founded upon. And so this case, again, it's another great one. Go to firstliberty.org. I think it's the first video. We have that video up now because it just happened in a recent case, and they can see what's really happening to these Jewish synagogues. We're in another fight with another one where the city is trying to kick their synagogue out of the neighborhood because they don't have enough parking spaces, okay? They're Orthodox Jews. They cannot drive on the Sabbath. And we've communicated this. They don't seem to care. So this is the kind of craziness to try to restrict religious freedom. But I would also encourage people, go look at the Bladensburg Cross, that memorial case. Very important case to spread around the country. People need to know about it.
Thank you so much for tuning in to Point of View. Great talking with you, and come back next time. Debbie Georgatos, Kelly Shackelford. Have a great day.
Sometimes I joke that I'll win the lottery when God blows the winning ticket across a parking lot to me. I don't buy tickets, so if he wants me to win, that's the way. Pretty silly, right? But a lot of us take a similar stance when it comes to the ills of our culture. We don't do anything. We simply hope things will change. I encourage you to get in the game and make things change. Join Truth Team 360 and be part of a work that changes lives and communities. Visit pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151.
From Paramount Pictures and PureFlix comes Same Kind of Different as Me. Ron and Debbie Hall have everything they could ever want, except for a loving marriage. But when Debbie befriends a homeless man, their lives begin to intersect, and they are all changed forever.
Amazing how far a little tender love and care can go.
Same Kind of Different as Me, based on the true story. In theaters October 20th, rated PG-13. May be inappropriate for children under 13. More information is available at samekindofdifferentasmemovie.com.
Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.